Hot on the heels of Ninja Gaiden's own 2D revival with the excellent Ragebound, Double Dragon Revive comes off more like a tribute band for the series rather than a proper reunion tour. It doesn't play the hits like you remember it, instead putting its own spin on things, from how it looks to how it sounds to how it plays. All those aspects not only failed to live up to my admittedly mild expectations for a new Double Dragon, but after hours of its out-of-tune meandering, started to cement the idea that maybe we need to put a little more distance between attempts to revitalize the series.
Yeah, that's what I was afraid you'd say, but I'm with you. Let's do this!
Even though I've been playing these games for most of my life, it's sort of jarring how straightforward Double Dragon Revive is. Side-scrollers of this arcadey belt scroll variety have found lots of ways to spice up the punch your way to the right recipe, and Revive seems interested in keeping as much of that new seasoning away from its plate as possible. It's a basic protein packed with 8 non-branching levels, accompanied by starchy combat that's filling, but has barely any sauce. Picking up any of the 4 playable characters is simple and intuitive, with normal attack strings that can be mashed out on one button alongside of special attacks and hyper blows that can be used to punctuate these combos, or in some instances extend your offense into wall bouncing juggles. All of these actions are unique to each fighter. Well, Billy and Jimmy Lee have distinctions that don't translate into mechanical differences, but former damsel turned head kicker Marion and ninja frenemy Ronzo have attacks that are a little more flashy and utilitarian. I rarely felt it necessary to use more than basic combo loops on normal difficulty though. As long as an enemy didn't have an annoying shield or hyper armor protecting them as they wound up a big attack, something ubiquitous in later levels, they were reliably vulnerable to a good old-fashioned fist to the face. There are limited options for those who want to attempt to style on these street thugs, but they all rely on bouncing enemies off of walls to keep them in the air long enough to string more hits together as they come down. It often felt like enemies kind of just went wherever they wanted after a launch or a throw as opposed to where you directed them to go, making a laborious task out of trying to set up simple combo extensions, jamming enemies into background environmental hazards that take them out of the fight instantly, or taking advantage of the super powerful wall strike and wall crash options. There are no air combos to be had either, so chasing a launched bad guy skyward only allows you a single disappointing smash down to earth, so you can wait for them to stand up and let you hit them again. Everyone can get a free hit on a downed enemy if you can finagle the finicky button prompt to do so that is unresponsive and unreliable. If there's the right kind of wall around, the right kind being the one they decide is right based on no reliable context clues, you can do a supersized air dropping attack, but even getting the wall kick off that's required to get the requisite height is a dice roll. Everyone has powerful screen-clearing finishing blow attacks that are charged up by all the fisticuffs, with boosts given to when you make a timely dodge, counter an enemy's big attack, or grow your combo meter. But no playable character, not even Ronzo's cool explosive kunai or Marion's charging knee, can make Revive's combat feel special or even interesting across long stretches of time. It took me around 3 hours to finish my first playthrough, and I lost interest well before that. That said, enemy variety is at least diverse and effective at making you use the small menu of options you have. As levels progress, old bad guys show up to mingle with the newer ones to form a sort of street thug gumbo that can get a little spicy towards the end of your run. It's largely a numbers game, with you often getting overwhelmed by the sheer amount of incoming blows from all angles. I like the little brain puzzle of having to identify the most dangerous threat to take out first, or needing to figure out the most efficient way to wrangle as many folks as possible into a big attack, but it wasn't beguiling enough for me to forget that the process of breaking these dudes down was still rather dull. Even the array of limited use weapons, though strong tools usually worthy of the effort to grab if things can parry, are your standard fare knives, 2x4s, sledgehammers, etc. As the challenge escalates, some of Revive's jank becomes an enemy of its own. Small things like the direction of your character sometimes defaulting to the opposite direction inexplicably, stops being a quirk to work around and starts being the reason you drop a combo or get punished. Bosses break the monotony up a little bit, introducing slightly more engaging stage hazards and pattern mechanics, like Linda, who you need to shake off of the pillars she's hiding on top of before you can strike her directly. These get pretty brutal towards the end though, specifically the Chapter 7 boss, which has to be the most aggravating fight I've maybe ever played in one of these games. Truly a test of endurance against a ceaseless onslaught of the most cheating cheaters the game has to offer. There's not a lot of flash visually either. Most character models look good, but the fire, wind, and dragon effects that come from their limbs when channeling their chi looks a step behind in quality. Camera work and sound design come together adequately to make big hits feel good and all that jazz. The soundtrack is decent, with a handful of original riffy rockouts and remixes of old series jams that sound good in the moment but sort of leave your head immediately after they end. Overall, Double Dragon Revive lacks the visual identity that the 16-bit Double Dragon Gaiden or even the pastel punk Double Dragon Neon have, let alone its peers like Shinobi and Ninja Gaiden Ragebound from this year. The stages you bash your way through run a much broader gamut. A colorful Japanese pagoda-style tower with a fun little perspective shift midway through is simple, but much more stirring than a nondescript highway level, even if there is a wrestling ring at the end of it. Some of these zones require some platforming that I was never happy to see, but in mercifully short bursts. It's a bit of an eye roll that most of these stages are just takes on series staple locations without much novel flair added this time around, but it's truly disappointing how many of these locations are just bland and lifeless.
Another hard day's work in the can. I'm starving.
And not to be one of those the story in this beat 'em up sucks sort of freaks, but I mean, it does. It's less that the plot is nonsense, the characters are bland, and the writing is lousy, and more that Revive lacks the confident and chaotic energy that is necessary to sell this sort of thing to begin with. The post-apocalyptic villain of Neon was a gang-leading demon knight straight out of a heavy metal album cover named Skullmageddon. The gang struggles in Gaiden made that version of New York City feel like Gotham City, complete with goons color-coded and themed after their outlandish bosses. By comparison, Revive is just a completely tame and underwhelming take on returning villains Willie and Raymond, who use black magic and the military-industrial complex to experiment on people and make the Sosetsuken kids' lives worse.
Right, settle down. These warriors, are they the ones?
Double Dragon Revive feels less like a return to glory that the title might suggest, and more like a police sketch of someone trying to describe what the series they loved looked like from memory. There's the important details you'd need to identify it by. Simple combat with big super attacks, peacocking bad guys of all shapes and sizes, the subway, casino, and elevator stages required by law to be in games like this, but none of it feels distinct or special. And the parts in which it's passable get held back by the wonky, unresponsive controls and maddening difficulty spikes. Revival suggests reinvigoration, but this feels more like exhuming a shambling corpse. For some better side-scrolling action from this year, check out our reviews of Shinobi Art of Vengeance or Ninja Gaiden Ragebound. And for everything else, stick with IGN.